On Sunday, that tension exploded in front of the Monroe courthouse as white bystanders clashed with Negro demonstrators. Alarm spread quickly, and soon many Negroes were enraged by reports of beatings and the jailings of some demonstrators.
That was a fearful day because people were getting beat up and imprisoned, and we didn't know where people were, and there was shots fired and everything, you know. But the scary part was when the Seagulls came onto the neighborhood, and the crowd wanted to, you know, attack them and kill them, and Rob said, no, protect them, you know, don't let nothing happen to them. And that was the time I felt, you know, I was going to have to fire on some of our own people because they were really angry.
According to Mrs. Stegall, she and her husband drove to Monroe Sunday afternoon to visit her mother. They heard of the disturbances in town but weren't involved until they took a shortcut to their destination. Then on Winchester Street, passing through a Negro neighborhood, a crowd suddenly blocked their path. Mrs. Stegall tells what happened then in these words.
Everybody had a gun of some kind. It was some of the officers' guns I've ever seen. And I remember one fellow that come pushing through like that with he had a sawed-off gun, a double barrel thing. He said, let me kill him, just like that.
Now, when did Williams come on the scene?
Well, after they had took us out of our car at gunpoint and marched us up the street to his house, and that was the first time I saw him in his yard.
They were very, very angry, and I could see that they were very angry. So when I came down into the yard, Mrs. Stegall said to me, "Oh, we've been kidnapped." And so I said, "Well, lady, you're not kidnapped here. If you want to go, you're free to go whenever you are ready." I said, "But you got to go through this crowd." And she said, "Well, if you take us out of here, we'll be all right." I said, "No, I'm not going to take you out because I didn't bring you here, and I'm not going to take you away. That you're free to leave whenever you're ready to go."
It hadn't even dawned on me that I was kidnapped. I didn't know I was God.
The people were screaming, still screaming. Some were practically hysterical, and one man started crying, just crying like a baby, and he said, give me a gun, let me kill them." And so I could tell that the crowd was becoming too tense. And I got into the crowd around the Stegalls, and I started pushing the crowd away from them.
According to Mrs. Stegall, she and her husband were to remain in the nearby house, which had been used to quarter Freedom Riders, until 9 o'clock, when they were released and drove through police lines to safety. After the Stegalls were taken from his house, William says he received a threatening phone call which prompted him to leave. He described it this way.
They said to me that, "Robert, you've caused a lot of trouble in this town, and now state troopers are on the way, and in 30 minutes you'll be hanging in the courthouse square." So I told my wife that we were going to have to leave.
We just walked out the back door, and that was one of the most frightful things that I've ever done in my life. I had on the worst dress you could ever imagine because I had just washed my clothes the day before, or no, that day, and we had them hanging on the line. I left my clothes hanging on the line. Rob had a machine gun, and I had his Luger, and the two boys were right there with us. And we stood there until the police car went down Fairley Avenue, and then we crossed Fairley Avenue and continued down the back alley.
We was standing upstairs. I heard a white man say, "I don't want no niggas up there, Lord, he's a bourgeois man."
As soon as we got in New York, I flashed my picture on television, said that I was extremely dangerous. So this complicated the matter because we didn't expect that. You see, because when we left, there was no kind of a warrant or anything.
Home of the brave, land of the free. I don't want to be mistreated by no bourgeoisie, Lord, in a bourgeois town. It's a bourgeois town. I got the bourgeois blues.
I was given political asylum in Cuba. I was there as an exile in Cuba, and I lived there as an exile.
Now, were there any particular Cuban leaders who gave you this asylum, or was it just, in general, the government there?
Well, actually, this political exile was given to me under the direct orders of Fidel Castro himself.
From Havana, Cuba, free territory of the Americas, Radio Free Dixie invites you to listen to the free voice of the South. Stay with us for music, news, and commentary by Robert F. Williams.
He came up with the idea of Radio Free Dixie, and we had to fight. He had to fight hard within Cuba to get it on the air. But eventually Fidel Castro, when he told Fidel Castro what his idea was, he said, well, we'll see what we can do. So finally they allowed him to have the Radio Free Dixie program.
Radio Free Dixie is presenting the soul side of rock in the Year of Fire. The social conscious rock and roller is calling attention to social injustice. Yes, these new cats are no slackers. We are tuned in to their wavelength, and we dig them plenty.
You can hear it throughout the South. You can hear it in New York City. You can hear it in Seattle. You can hear it in Los Angeles. And, they're trying desperately to jam it, and eventually, between the Cuban censorship and the FBI and the CIA jamming it, it reaches a much smaller audience eventually.
But we would just almost embrace the radio just to hear his voice. That was the treat of the weekend.
Radio Free Dixie is proud to present these seldom heard songs of brutal oppression and dehumanization that no American radio station dares broadcast.
The music was fantastic, the jazz was fantastic, and sometimes now I can hear those songs echoing in my mind, Watermelon Man and The Protest, Nina Simone, Mississippi Goddamn.
Alabama's got me so upset. Tennessee made me lose my rest. And everybody knows about Mississippi Goddamn.
Robert F. Williams, Afro-American refugee from racial oppression in the USA, former official of the NAACP, author of the book Negroes with Guns.
Presently, we must use whatever method in our possession. We must make use of the gas bomb, the lycan, the ice pick, the switchblade, the axe, the hatchet, the razor, the brick, and the bullet. Next year, we shall meet machine gun with machine gun, hand grenade with hand grenade, in a new spirit of meeting violence with violence.
Now, did you ever feel that what you were doing was in any way act of treason or unpatriotism towards your country, towards the United States of America, or had you abandoned America? Did you feel you were now a Cuban, or what?
No, I don't believe any man who lives under tyranny in a government can ever be truthfully accused of treason. Treason can only come when a man is entitled to the rights and privileges, and he is protected by his government, and then he betrays that government. Then he can be accused of treason. But when the government betrays its trust to its people, then the government is what is guilty, is the guilty party to treason. And I consider the government of the United States to have failed the black people in America in protecting the rights of black people and the enforcement of the Constitution.
The lawlessness that broke out with unbridled fury in the Watts section of Los Angeles was deplored by responsible Negroes and whites alike.
In the spirit of '76, in the spirit of Los Angeles, let our people take to the streets in fierce numbers, and in the cause of freedom and justice, let our battle cry be heard around the world. Freedom, freedom, freedom now, or death.
I think all of us kind of, during that period, felt a certain amount of the romance of revolution. And we felt that it might work, it might overcome the odds, where everyone was telling you can't use these tactics because you're only 1/10 of the population.